when I got fucked up on fentanyl, because Vancouver has a really bad problem out there, right? And when I was on tour, I'd actually found out that my friend Cam was struggling with that stuff. And I was like, oh, I was so angry. I was like, why would he do that? I would have never done that. Like, I was the last guy in the world to go out and want to like do that stuff, you know? Like, it just wasn't like I like doing like acid and mushrooms and stuff, but I never thought like in a million years. And when I found out Cam was doing it, I got really mad and upset. And then what ended up happening was one time, I think it was on like M or something like that. It was on some upper, and we went on a trip to go pick up some weed, and something just changed in my brain. And I just said, you know what, man? I'm never going to give you hard love again. Like, I'm never going to give you tough love again. Like, from here on out, it's only going to be soft love. Like, I don't care. Like, I don't want to lose you as a friend. Like, I don't want you to die one day, and then for me to be like, shit, I cold shouldered him. You know, like, I was like, no, I'm just gonna be there for my friend when I can, you know. I'm not, and I told him, like, man, if you're withdrawing, you can come to my room, you can scream, you can punch, you can do whatever you need to do. If you need someone to just scream at, I'll fucking stand here and you can scream at me and tell me how it's all my fault. I don't care. Cam was doing like out there they call fentanyl down. Like, it's like, I don't know, like, yeah, they just call it down. So bear with me, I use that term a lot, down, when I'm like talking about fentanyl. Some people are like, oh, I'll call it fentanyl, and I'm like, dude, I'm just gonna call it what I knew it as, you know, because when I was doing it, I wasn't calling my dealer being like, yo, I need some fentanyl. I was calling them being like, yo, I need some down. So I got into that because I was kind of looking for something that she didn't do. Like, she wasn't doing it at the time. So I was like, if I do this, I can do it. It's something that I can do with my friends that she doesn't do, that, like, you know. And then also, in a weird kind of way, like, I think I was doing it for people to feel not bad for me, but for people to have a little bit more sympathy for me, you know. Like, I feel like I was kind of trying to do that, like, oh, well, they treat them with all that, like, they treat these people that way, like, you know, they'd never let them use alone, so, you know, how come they are letting me use alone, you know, the kind of thing. I was trying to like kind of gain sympathy in that sense, but then, you know, like, I was doing it also too because it was helping me get away from the pain, you know, of the breakup. And what ended up happening was one day I woke up and it was like a fish hook in the mouth, like, it got me. And I was like, oh, fuck, I was screaming. I was like in pain, toss and turn. Cam came in the room. He's like, what's going on, man? And he's like, I was like, oh, dude, I'm dying. He's like, yep, you're in withdrawal. It's your first taste. And I was like, go fucking get me, like, go get it now. Like, here, fucking take money. Like, I don't care. Like, who can, like, what do I got to do? Who fucking owes me money? Like, you know, what do I got to do? Because at that point, I was like, fuck, I don't want to feel that anymore. I do not want to feel that pain. So I ended up going down that, like, kind of rabbit hole, because then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to stop this. And then I kind of weaned off a little bit, and I wasn't in it long enough to be, like, full on hooked. Like, I was able to get myself out a bit. But then I think, like, I don't know, me and Joe, we were broken up, and she had gone away, and I just, for some reason, she had gone away for the weekend or something like that, and I was like, fuck it, like, no one's around, no one's home, I'm just going to do a bunch of down and sit in my room and listen to some records and shit. So, and the thing too, I should say, I never used a needle, I only ever smoked it, because I knew a lot of people that were using needles, and they all said, like, once you do this, you'll never come home from it. You'll never stop. It'll never be the same. So I always wanted to give myself that. Like, I didn't want to do that to myself, because I just wanted something to help me cope, to get through, you know. I just wanted something to help me with this breakup, going through this issue. So I didn't want to be in it full time. And then getting myself kind of wrapped up into it, what ended up happening, you know, I was an addict when I got kicked out, and then I was like, you know, I'm a junkie, I'm just getting tired, I'm burnt out, I'm using, like, I was probably spending about $50 every day, and then that would last me through the day a bit in the morning, and then I could grab again, and then I was just living that lifestyle, you know. People were feeding me, that's the other thing too, like, God bless them, they were feeding me food and, like, helping me out along the way, and just getting by. And then I met friends too. The other thing too, like, my friend Peter, he was watching this building that was being renovated, like it used to be a restaurant and it was being turned into a daycare. So he would sit with me sometimes, and then I convinced him to let me go use like around back where like the back of the building. So he was really cool about that, and I like God bless him because like he let me go back there, and he was like, well, what do I do? What happens? Well, I was like, dude, just maybe every 10, 15 minutes, just give me a shout, and like if you have to, dude, just pull this thing out and hit me with this. Like I showed him how to use a Narcan kit. It's really easy to use a Narcan kit. Do you know how to use one, or you ever seen one?
I know the concept of it. I haven't had to use one, but around here it's a fucking gigantic issue. It's just like how like it's insane. Like for a town of 21,000 people, that many people are screwed up on fentanyl and ODing on a daily basis. It's sad.
Vicious. It is, and that's the other thing too. Like when I like essentially what happened was I was at my wit's end, and like addiction, like I was in a weird position because when you're homeless and you're an addict, what they want to do is they want to put you on Suboxone, right? Suboxone just they're gonna wait for you to be in full blown withdrawal. And then they're gonna put you on that, and then it's gonna what do you call it? It's gonna make you feel better, whatever. But the thing is you have to be in full blown withdrawal to go on it. And like first time that there was like one day where I don't know, I woke up one morning and I was just sick. Like I was really not doing well. Like I couldn't breathe. Like I just could not fucking breathe. To be honest, I was in withdrawal and not really fully realizing it because of how badly I couldn't breathe. That was the other thing too with fentanyl. The withdrawal from fentanyl, like after a couple hours, I would lose my breath. And that's a scary feeling. Like that's a really scary feeling to really lose your breath like that. So that's where the panicking of your brain is like, you need this now because you can't breathe. So I was like stuck somewhere or whatever. I was like sleeping the first month I was homeless or so. I was sleeping on someone's couch. God bless my friend Laura for letting me. And it got to a point where she was like, I'm surprised you're still here. Like, are you like you've been here for a while? And I was like, okay, I'm sorry. I haven't figured out my shit yet. I'll go along. So I did, but God bless her for letting me stay for a month. And then for some reason, I ended up getting back on the couch at the Hell House because Joe had left for a couple months, and I convinced them. Like I went over to visit a friend, and then everybody was gone, so I convinced them to let me stay for a month. And then I got kicked out twice, technically, from the same place. But then dealing with the busking and everything was just like getting too hard on me. The addiction was just fucking killing me. I had another friend, Martin, and Martin, he was a really good guy. He helped me through a lot of shit. We reflected off each other a lot. I was talking about the Suboxone. Yeah, sorry, I was talking about the Suboxone. I was struggling with like withdrawal one day. I had to call an ambulance. I went in the hospital for the day, and I was just screaming in withdrawal, like in so much pain. They were like, "Sir, you're bothering the other patients." I'm like, "I don't care. I'm dying in withdrawal," like just fucking dying in pain. So giving me the Suboxone, I ended up going back or whatever, and I think it was around the same time where I ended up back on the couch at the Hell House, and because going back there, everyone's was using Suboxone wasn't the right answer. It was like, no, Suboxone's not good, and then I kept like putting it under my tongue and then taking off and then not taking it. So like I was like, oh, I'll take it later when I'm in actual withdrawal, but I was really never in withdrawal because I just kept myself out of it. So then when I was like I said, I went from someone's couch. After I got kicked out, I went to someone's couch, went back there for a month on the couch there, then ended up in a shelter for a month or so. And I was just breaking down. I got, when you're homeless, like I said, like you can't take Suboxone because you'll just go right back into it. Like the second you come out, you're right back because you have to get yourself out of that situation. And methadone, if you end up on methadone, then you're just hooked on two drugs. Like that's the other thing too. Like, you have to fix yourself before you can fix the addiction, and that's really hard because the addiction just eats away at you. So I didn't like my dad knew that I was really sick, but he didn't my dad was the last person I wanted to tell in the world because he was like, I was surprised he didn't fly. Yeah, like I was surprised he didn't fly down, beat my ass, and then fucking fly back out and tell me to figure it out, like I was like legit, like I was scared to tell, and he knew. And then I didn't tell him it was fentanyl. I told him it was heroin, like as if it's any different, but like you know what I mean. Technically it is, but like really it's not. But like So he was like, there was a big difference for him. He felt like fentanyl was like gonna kill me instantly, heroin I could maybe live, like kind of thing. So I always said like, oh, I'm just on heroin, I'm just on heroin. So he didn't. I don't think he took it as serious. And I was like homeless. He's like, oh, you'll figure it out, you'll figure it out. Just praying for me. I got to a point where I was calling him and I was like, Dad, I'm gonna die. Like I'm gonna die. If you don't come and get me, I will die. And it got to the point where, yeah, like the first couple times I did that and said like, hey, I'm gonna die. He was like, no, tough it out. It got to a point where I told my dad, I'm like, Dad, we're in September now, and it's gonna get snowy in October, and I'm not gonna die from the addiction. I'm gonna die from freezing to death outside. Like I was more worried. I wasn't necessarily worried about the addiction as much as I was worried about not having a roof above my head. Because it's one thing to be homeless in the summer, and it's one thing to choose to be homeless, but it's another thing to be forced into homeless and be in the winter. So it was tough.
I couldn't even fucking imagine that. Like I'm so bad with the cold. Like even being right now, I'm in a t-shirt and have jeans on. Like I couldn't even just imagine being like out in that nonsense. Like having to be out in that nonsense.
Yeah. And the day that really broke down for me, it was this weekend, and in New West they were doing like a whole recovery addiction parade thing. And I remember this girl, Catherine, this lady, God bless her too. Catherine was the one that kind of kept me afloat towards the end. She was like this old lady, and I reminded her of her son. So she kind of took interest in me, and it was hard to tell her that I was an addict too, because she was such nice lady, but she was there for me, and she let me stay over a couple times, which was so nice of her. And she was like, I don't understand why your dad won't come and get you. I don't understand why. And I was like, I don't think he understands. And then one day I just told him, like we were at the recovery parade, and I showed Catherine that she was like, oh, here, we can get you help. And I couldn't find a single vendor for the recovery program that would actually help me in my situation. All of them, you had to be like at least a week sober, or they couldn't help you, or at least a week or 90 days or whatever, right? I think it was the last store. I kind of was not the biggest fan of that recovery program out there, and I've told them that too personally. But then again, there's a lot of good programs out there. There's a lot of good, and they're working on like the next level of treatment. I almost got into a treatment program where I was able to use like legal like heroin or whatever. And I was close to getting into it, but then I don't know. By the time they wanted to get me into it, I was on my way out. So I was kind of like, I don't think that this is for me. But when I was telling my dad, like, I'm going to die, like, there was that weekend after the thing, like, I realized there was nobody that could help me. And I didn't want to just get on a plane and go home, because you can't just do that with an addiction like that. You have to, there's a certain way you kind of got to do it, at least in my opinion. And the way I got through it was my dad finally decided to come out and get me that day. He booked that flight that night, and it was like, I called him that day and I was just bawling. I was like, no, like, I'm going to die. Like, I'm not, this isn't months anymore. It might not be days, but this is definitely weeks. I'm going to die in weeks or so. So he was like, fuck it, I got to do something. So my dad flew out and came and picked me up, and like for about 2 weeks, he kind of got all my affairs in order while I was like struggling with my addiction. He was like, he had to kind of see how he saw firsthand how much that drug had a grip on me. Like it had a grip. Like before he came, there was a lady that gave me $150. I don't know. It started with 20, and then she just kept dropping money. And my reaction to the money kept getting her to give me more money somehow. And at the end of the day, I walked out with 150 from this one lady alone. And I called her crying, being like, Dad, I have $150 and my feet are going to the drug dealer. I'm not going. My brain isn't going. My feet are going. My feet are walking me down this hill. Like, I can't physically stop myself. I could not stop myself. If I did, I would be like screaming and flailing in the middle of the street. Like, it would be embarrassing, like I couldn't not go. And it was weird. There was times where I'd be in withdrawal and I would find a way and finally get that cash. I'd be so tired, falling asleep on the bus, but my brain would wake up 2 stops before I had to get off, because my body or brain. Addiction's weird like that. So my dad had to see firsthand like how much that had a grip on me. And then, you know, I was on method. I started to get on methadone because I kind of knew he was coming, or I was really desperate to like for help. I was trying anything. I was like, oh, Suboxone didn't work, I'll try methadone. My dad was weary about that too. And then he came to help me. I had this idea that I would just wean off. And you can't really wean off. It's hard. You know, I tried. I got from like maybe $30 or $50 a day down to like 20, $25 a day or something like that. I got maybe $15 a day, or, you know, like a 20 bag would last me almost all day. So stuff like that, right? Like I did get lower, and that kind of helped me going forward, because if I had been on such a higher dose, like that's when I got on methadone, they put me by the time I finally stopped going up, because they don't start you just at a high dose, they start you at a low dose and then you work your way up. By the time, because of how strong fentanyl is, by the time I walked away, I was at 70, and I almost went up to 90, because like a couple days before we left Vancouver, my dad was like, you got to go into detox for a couple days because I'm scared of how you're going to be driving back. So I was like, okay. I went into detox for 2 days. He convinced me. You know, it wasn't easy to convince me, but I went. And then 2 days in detox, or it was like a Friday morning I went. I was out Sunday morning. And then we spent the day in Vancouver together. And this is kind of an interesting one, because we spent the day in Vancouver together, and we went to, my mom really likes churches, so my dad wanted to go to like the oldest church in Vancouver for my mom to see, you know, take pictures and stuff. And one of the things that he did was he wanted to get a rosary. He was like, I gotta get you whatever one you want, just pick a rosary. So I picked this one that was like, I liked it. It was black, so I liked it. So he got the priest. He wanted to sit in for one of the class. So we sat in for mass, and I'd never done it before, and I was like, okay, I'll give this a. I'm trying to get recovered. My dad's like, you know, instead of finding drugs, find God, kind of thing, right? My dad's not overly religious, but he is, you know, I'd say he's like 70-80% religious. He's very, you know, he is a Christian. So he got this rosary bead blessed by the guy who gave the Sunday Mass sermon. And I guess on our way back, because we were having such a good time, I forgot about methadone. And I had to go to like the what do you call it, the London Drug, like the Shoppers Drug Mart of out west. I had to go there to go get my methadone, and I missed out by like 10 minutes on my methadone. So because at that point I had just come out of detox for 2 days, and then I don't have my methadone, I was a Jonesy little shit. Like I was like, I'm fucking dying. Oh my God, it was awful. So the next morning I fucking, I guess like I stayed up all night concocting this plan. My dad went for breakfast like he was doing every morning to like the Waffle House or whatever, and I snuck off to the bank, which, by the way, before my dad had come, I frauded the bank for $300 or $200. I kept putting in blank checks, because I was at that point, you're at full-blown addiction, right? Like when you're at full-blown addiction, you start doing stupid shit. So like that was my downfall. That was how I knew. I was like, yeah, that's how I knew too. That was another thing. I was like, oh, I've done this. Now I can't recover. Like now I'm on a downhill no matter what. So because of that, I had to go to a teller. I had to go to a bank teller to get my money. And the next morning, my dad was in the Waffle House. I ran to the teller. He was trying to get a hold of me. Couldn't figure out why. And he's like, oh shit. So he catches on. By the time he caught on, ran over to the bank. I'm down the road trying to go get like drugs. But I have this rosary beads on me, and there's two guys I used to grab from. It makes real sense really quick. There was a guy that was closer, but he had weaker stuff, and there was a guy that was further, but he had stronger stuff.
Always how it goes.
Yeah, and then exactly. So I'm like, oh, I hop on the bus right away. I'm like booking down. I call the guy. I'm like, yeah, you got it ready? He's like, yeah, I got it ready. I'm like, okay. And for some reason, I don't know, maybe I called both or something. The other guy called me, like the closer guy with weaker stuff called me. And I don't know what possessed me. I still to this day don't know. But I got off the bus and I went and grabbed the weaker stuff, and I used again, even though I'd been in detox for 2 days, whatever. But then, so my parents were really worried. They're freaking out, trying to call me. And I had a dentist appointment because my dad kept making me go to the dentist because I had like good dental care out west. So my teeth are really fucked. Like I'm not even going to show you how many teeth I'm missing, but I have a lot gone. And so he was getting me to go all the time to this dentist, and like I was like, fuck, I don't want to go to this dentist, because every time I go to the dentist I just want to use down right after. I'm like, okay, I'll get through it because I'll just use after. So I'm like, fuck, struggling about this dentist appointment. I grab the weaker stuff, and then I convinced my buddy Martin to come with me, and then I convinced him that I'll give him like what is it, like 35 or $50 or something, and he's got to go grab me 3 bags, and then I'll share a bag with him or something like that. I'll take the other 2 home, and then that will be what I use on my trip back, just to like wean me down, right? That was my plan. I was going to wean me down. Then Martin decided, like, so Martin goes and gets the good stuff. And there's a reason why I'm saying all this. So for some reason at the last minute, he gets a weird change of heart. He feels bad for my dad coming out all the way to get me, and he's doing this, like, you know, kind of going behind my dad's back to go get me stuff. So he gives my dad the 3 bags, and I'm livid. I come out of this dentist appointment like I'm gonna kill this guy. Like, I'm like, you fucking did what? You just gave $50 of my drugs away? Like, I'm gonna kill you. So in the end, after arguing with him and stuff, I got in a big fucking argument with him. And then, I don't know what ended up happening. I remember seeing my ex that day and my buddy Cam that day, and I was just livid. I was so angry. I was such a mess, too, because I was like fucking withdrawing and all that shit. So anyways, that night, I was really pissed with Martin over that. I was like, fuck, you owe me $50, you fucking asshole. So anyways, I was pissed. And then later that night, Martin calls me and is like, dude, I'm going to make it up to you. And I'm like, fuck, it's like 11 o'clock at night, dude. I'm going home. Like, I'm leaving the next morning. Like, what do you want? And he's like, I'm gonna grab for us one last time, one last go at it. All right, well, fuck it, why not? One last time, sure, why not? So we go and we missed the bus, or we missed the last SkyTrain. So we jump in a taxi. I don't know how much money he has, so we get out of the taxi. I'm trying to call this dealer. The dealer's kind of like, I don't know, sometimes they run on different shifts, so I got the sketchy guy for some reason, and he's like, oh man, blah, 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 being all weird, and like, I'm like, yo, can I meet up with you for 20? Where are you? Blah, blah, trying to figure this shit out. Just everything in the world was making every miscommunication happen possible. We run out of money. We were supposed to get 2 bags. Martin ran out of money in the cab, like trying to get the cab money, all this shit. So like, everything in its power is preventing us from scoring. And then to the point where I'm like, the guy was like pissed. He was like, don't fucking call my number again. Like, cause I kept calling me like, yo man, can you meet me like here or there? And he'd be like, meet me here. I'm like, I don't know where that is. He's like, you fucking idiot. Cause you know, they get angry, right? Those guys have a temper. So at the end of the day, we realized we're not going to grab. We walk back to where the SkyTrain is, and we're waiting for the next morning to come, so that like we can just get on the SkyTrain. He goes his way, I go my way. Never see each other again. Not on purpose, but just because I was going back out east, he was, you know, going back to his wife. And we never ended up grabbing or anything like that. And I realized after why, and it was because of that rosary bead. It was that fucking rosary bead, because my dad had got that blessed from the guy, and when he got it blessed, he was like, my dad's, I don't know how it worked exactly, but it was like my dad wanted that thing to be blessed, and he wanted me to keep it with me to keep me away from drugs. He was like, I'm going to get this blessed, so this will keep you from using or keep you away from a bad crowd or whatever. Like, it'll keep you safe, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, I always felt like the reason why I grabbed the weaker stuff instead of that stronger stuff that day, and went through all of that and never got, like, through all that whole mission of that day, I never got that stronger stuff, and I totally believe it's because of that little, you know, little thing like that. So my dad got me, and then we went across the country again, and I was in withdrawal. I came back in October 2017, and then I sobered up. And then, like, we were talking about wrestling, how wrestling got me sober.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily got me sober, but it's just that it really helped me along, because it was something that it was definitely something that like has so much content to it, right? So every day I was like, I'd wake up in withdrawal and I'd just look on my phone and I'd watch a YouTube video of like top 10 wrestlers, or like that you didn't know, you know, did this, or it was just, I immersed myself so much in the business, and I learned so much behind the scenes, what was going on. I learned where the old guys were. I learned who the new guys are. I immersed myself in that world for so long that I love it. When it comes to sobriety and that level, I'm really good about that. Like, everybody is doing on their own level. Like, I love pot myself. Like, that was the one thing I kind of noticed about myself personally, is that when it comes to addiction, it's like, you know, they always say like once an addict, always an addict. And I think that for me, at least, that applies in the sense that how I went from, like, you know, doing what I call down to coming back and doing weed, like smoking weed all the time. And it was weird. I kind of switched to one for the other and then replaced it back again. So I find that, for me, I've always had that, like, it's like if it wasn't weed, it would be something else. But at the same time, everybody that I know is at different levels. I have good friends that, like, they poke and use needles, and that's them, and I still love them and I still care about them, because that's how do I explain it? If, like, I know drugs change people, but if the person I'm talking to is still like coherent and is still like a good solid person, I don't really care what, like nodding out mid conversation, like kind of thing like that, or as long as they're not like grinding their jaw and like doing some crazy shit, like, I mean, I talk a million miles a minute. You'd probably think I was on an upper, but like, no, I'm naturally that way. That's why I get pretty, yeah.
I'm the exact same way, man. I'm the exact same way.
It's kind of funny because you know what? I know like some people who are in recovery, or not necessarily in recovery, but whatever, like they're at different stages of sobriety, and they'll say to me like, dude, why do you always fucking talk about it? Like, why are you always going on about it or whatever? Like, it's like, fuck it, it's kind of tiring. I don't want to hear it or whatever or something. And I'm like, man, honestly, it's what helps me. Like I got into an argument with a buddy of mine who I'm good friends with now, but I remember one of the times when I first met him, he was like, man, like, blah, blah, like, you're always going on about this, like, like, you're not helping anybody, blah, blah, and I turned around, I was like, dude, I'm helping myself. Like, I forget I'm kind of paraphrasing, I forget exactly what he said, but I turned around and I said, you know what, man, like, this is what helps me get through this, because I'm able to talk about this and reflect on my experiences personally, and because of that reflection, I'm comfortable with who I am and what I've done and where I've been and everything like that. So I don't have any like not necessarily a shame, but like I don't have any like, oh, that's not a good topic or that's not something I want to bring up or whatever. It's like, fuck, it happened and that's how it goes. Like, I'm not gonna pretend it didn't, So I'm super open and comfortable with all that, like, and stuff like that. And I've been in rooms too after like being sober and stuff like that where people have been doing drugs and stuff like that. And I think what it comes down to is if you don't want to do it, you're just not going to do it. Like, if you don't want to do something, then you just got to tell yourself, like, I just don't want to do this. Like, if you, you can say, oh, I don't want to do this, but you really want to do it, like, oh, I don't want to smoke cigarettes, but then I'm going to go smoke a fucking pack. But there's a difference if you're like with hard alcohol, you're like, I just don't want to drink hard alcohol. I can still drink a beer, but I don't want to drink hard alcohol. If you just don't want it, you're just not going to do it. And that was the thing for me when it comes to my sobriety, whether it's, I'm not necessarily sober off alcohol, but I don't drink like I used to by any means. And that's just because I just didn't want to anymore. And if I wanted, like today, like if I wanted to go and grab a 6-pack of beer and do that and drink 6 beers while I was doing this, I could have done that, but I was like, for me personally, I don't feel that. So when I do drink, it's because I'm out at a show or something like that. Like, I made a post recently about how it's not punk rock that makes me want to drink, it's drinking that makes me want to punk rock. One of the big things that Arthur and Binbrook both have, and I always tell this to people who are trying to get like clean off drugs, like you have to go where the drugs aren't, because you'll find the drugs everywhere. Like everywhere, whether you're in Owen Sound, whether you're in Arthur, fuck, even I know somebody offered me blow once, and I'm in Binbrook, like I didn't think that was, so I was like, so it's out there, but you have to put yourself in a situation, like I didn't go out very much, or if I went to Guelph, I tried to stay secluded more, and if you don't do that, then you're just going to end up in the bad, even just by like times where I was in Guelph, there was times where I didn't necessarily relapse, but I got pretty close, like, or I hit the bottle hard and was like, who can I call, like, and then you have to realize you have to take yourself out of that environment in order to get clean, because you can want to quit all day long, but if I would have been back in that hell house, I would have never gotten clean, ever in a million years gotten clean. And I love that place so much. I didn't want to leave. I fucking loved it so much. But when I finally left and got out, I was like, man, like, and my friend Credence, she died in that house, and I miss her a lot, because she was, like I was saying before, she let me stay and stuff. I really, she was such a good person. And that house ate her up, and she kind of had a bit of history with that house before there anyways, but I just she's her and Andre I miss a lot, and I talked to Gunther recently, and he's in Toronto or something like that. I don't want to meet up with him again because I haven't seen him since being out there. But now it's kind of weird because, you know, I'm not that person anymore. It's not that I'm not the washout, but I've grown a lot, you know?